Welcome back to Mentally Magnificent. My name is Crystal Turner. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner who has gone holistic because I know to be whole is to be healed. And we're talking about being whole because we're considering all parts of us. We're considering our mind and how our mind is impacted. We're considering our spirit and how our spirit is impacted, and we're considering our body and how our body is impacted when they're off balance, but also when they are better balanced. How do we see things different? The point is that they play off of one another. Today's video, I am talking about 10 phrases that really hurt you spiritually, physically, mentally. And it's important for us to flip the things that we say if we understand that words really do have power. And some of these phrases are things that we want to release altogether because there's no way to really flip them to be to your advantage. So we're going to do that, but we're going to do that as I am discussing a tea blend that I'm making for the week. I am making this tea blend for my daughter and for myself and for my son. And that is because last week I made a really great tasting tea that my daughter loved, but she noticed after several days of drinking it, she was getting headaches from it. And so I had to go and look at what it made me think about first is her tissue type. And I'll talk to you about that in a moment. Well, let me talk to you about it now. Our tissue type is just that, our tissue type. And some people could have a warming tissue type or a cool tissue type, as well as either a moistening tissue type or a dry tissue type. So you have one of each. Either you're warming and cooling, along with you're either warm or cool, along with moist or dry. It's a combination of one of the two. So for me, for example, my tissue type is I am cool and dry. That is my tissue type. My daughter, her tissue type is moist and warm. So she's completely opposite from me in this way. And so these are things that I've learned that you have to consider when you are drinking tea. Not to say you can't benefit from both, but it's a balance of trying to, be mindful of those things. So for example, my daughter, the tea I made last week was a really great tea, but there was a lot of warming teas in it because I have a cool tissue type, which means sometimes my energy is stagnant, and I like to put some warming things in there to help get things flowing, and it tends to make me feel so much better because I have such a cool tissue type. When I add warming teas to my tea blend, I notice that, and I notice the benefit of that. But for my daughter, because she is a warm tissue type, I had a number of warming elements in there. It was a bit much. And one of the things I was looking up, when we go too much over into the warm side, if you already have a warm tissue type and you drink something that's also warming and there's no balancing, one of the things that could happen is headache. So I'm thinking that was what she was experiencing. So because of that, I am making a rendition of something similar to what I made last week because it did taste so good, but I want to add some cooling and drying herb in there to balance things out. So the tea blend that I'm making, it is a sorrel tea with a few added components to it. So I never knew what sorrel tea was, but there is a YouTube influencer. His name is Dr. Bobby Price. Dr. Bobby Price is a pharmacist who utilizes this platform to talk about holistic ways to get true healing from our foods and the things that we do, as opposed to manufactured medications which can help treat symptoms, but they don't cause or help with curing or correcting a thing. And so that is where his channel is where I heard of the sorrel tea. And the reason I was listening to it at that time is because one of the things he was talking about, I believe, on his channel was about how it can have benefits for the kidneys. And my mom has kidney failure, not where she's getting dialysis, but she does have stage 3 kidney failure. And I wanted to, try this tea with her. And so I made it for her, and she liked it. I do need to make it for her again, but she really enjoyed the tea. And her kidney function, her numbers have started reversing. And I'm going to attribute some of that to the tea, along with the other things that she's doing to help with that. The thing about sorrel tea is, when I was looking at it, I believe it's a tea that comes from Jamaica or from the Caribbean. And Some of the things that are in it, these are the things I'll be adding as I'm talking to you about our mind and the things that we're saying, thinking, projecting. I wanted to let you know what goes in the sorrel tea. So one of the main ingredients of the sorrel tea is hibiscus, which such a beautiful deep red color lets me know that it has a benefit of having antioxidants in it. And so that's the base of the sorrel tea, is the hibiscus flower. And then also cinnamon is another big component of the sorrel tea. And this is one of the warming herbs that I put into my blends because again, it helps me get things going in my system. So cinnamon is another part. So we have hibiscus, we have cinnamon, orange peel, like dried orange peel is another part of that, which gives it a nice added flavor. If you can think about citrusy flavor that an orange peel would do. Also for me, it helps with being more vibrant, I feel. And then in addition to that, what would also tend to be in the sorrel tea is brown sugar. When I was looking at like the traditional way that this sorrel tea is made, oftentimes it's a holiday tea or holiday drink, and there's a good amount of brown sugar that's in it, but I'm not using brown sugar. But I did want to have some kind of sweetener in it, so I'm using stevia leaf. And what I'll say about stevia leaf is that if you were to try to use the same amount equivalent of brown sugar that you would use in sorrel tea with stevia, it would be, I don't think you'd enjoy it because it's very sweet. So it doesn't take much of this to do the job of helping your drink have a sweet flavor. But what I'm adding to this in addition to those things, so that's the base of the sorrel tea. I'm also going to be adding holy basil. Holy basil is an adaptogenic herb, which for me, it helps with mood, it helps with stress levels. And so I like that. I want that in my drink. Dandelion leaf is the herb that I'm going to put an extra amount of this in there. I didn't use this last time when I made this drink and my daughter was drinking it, but the dandelion leaf is cooling and it's drying. So it will help balance some of this for her. And then I'm going to put a little agrimony in here. The reason I put an agrimony, it's not an herb that I even was educated on using for any particular reason, but I remember being in like the health food store and always being drawn to looking at this name agrimony and just being curious about it. So after a few years of just always being curious, when I would come across this name so often, I'm like, let me get some agrimony and try it. And I've tried it and I've really liked the benefits of it in my body. Now, like I mentioned, my daughter is warm and moist and I am cool and dry. A lot of these herbs that I'm using are a little drying. So I do want to have burdock root. I'm not going to put it in her blend, but I will probably make me another blend, or I'll try this next week. I'll swap something out and add burdock root so I can just pay attention to what benefit that gives me. That's how I try to do things. I try to either start with herbs, taking them by themselves so I can understand the benefits I get, or if I make a change, I make a change one at a time so I can also notice the difference with that different tea blend as opposed to the tea blend before. So that's what we're doing this week. I'm gonna start adding these things to my pot well, I'll talk to you about what I do with this when we get to that point. But right now, we are gonna start talking about the mind. We're talking about things that I'm doing for the body, even though these herbs also have spiritual benefits on helping with your thoughts. In many situations, people have that benefit. I've had that benefit. But we're going to talk specifically about 10 terms that we tend to say not thinking about it. You know, some of these things become cliche statements that we just say because we've been in systems or environments where you hear these things being said, but really they are to our detriment to be reiterating things and thinking that words mean nothing. What we speak, we are putting that out into the universe, first of all, but also it is something that we're solidifying within ourselves, our belief system, our thought process, you know, and all of these things are important to be mindful of. And sure, we can't do everything all at once, but to have an awareness is the start. So that's why we're going to talk about these things. And the first statement that I want to say, first of all, this is a statement that should be eradicated from any Black person's vocabulary, in my opinion. It's something that I, for many years would say. And then at one point I just started thinking, like, where in the world did this word come from? I know it didn't, I have a strong inclination, and I know it didn't not have a benefit to me and, the Black people in my life. And so that is black male. So this is a word that we use often called black male. Black male is supposed to mean that someone is trying to maybe frame you, get over on you, do you dirty in some type of way. And what that really states, if you really think about it, is that you're saying that a black man is associated with a lot of wrongdoing or harm. And I have a lot of black men in my family. I have had black brothers. I've had a father who has transitioned. One of my brothers has transitioned. I have a beautiful black son. I have a wonderful black nephew. My daughter has black friends who are male, and so does my son. And I see a lot of goodness in these people. And it's important to me to be mindful of how I am speaking about them. And this statement, black male, which associates wrongdoing, is so erroneous because so many black men are doing great things in their life, in the lives of their family, in society. We're not talking about perfection, but I am not going to be one who puts down black men. I'm not going to be a part of that. And I know that when it comes to these sayings, we sometimes think of them lightly, or we don't put much into it, but I think it comes from a very strong intention. And so my intention is to eradicate words like that has such a strong intention toward my harm. And so black male is one that eradicate from the vocabulary. The second one would be a little white lie. Again, so we're suggesting that black is, associated with wrong or bad, and then this white is associated with good or innocence or being harmless. But I know that we know, and historically, that a lie, first of all, a lie is a lie. Second of all, a little white lie, I don't know, I've seen a lot of harm that has come historically from white people who have come to harm other cultures. So that idea of something being little, that's subjective. That depends on the person who's benefiting from this lie and who's being harmed from this lie. And so with that, it's another one where I eradicate that word from my vocabulary because that's so erroneous. We've seen historically how lies are harmful and how white lies and them being little, that might be little to the people who are benefiting, but it could be huge for the people who are impacted from that lie. So I'm gonna put a cup and a half of the hibiscus. Well, no, I think I'm gonna do 1 cup. Hibiscus is so rich, you're gonna see the benefit. Oh no, I am gonna put a cup and a half because it's the base of this, and everything else I'm gonna put smaller increments except the dandelion. That's gonna be the largest amount that I put of any other herb because I'm really making this especially for my daughter, and I wanna make sure that it's helping her. I want her to get the benefits. She likes dandelion leaf and dandelion root. All right, so I'm not good enough. This is a statement that I think that we can flip, right? We could change what we're saying. So I'm not good enough. Suggests that there's something that you're not capable of, that you can't do. And one thing we can recognize is that in our life experience, it's always a progression for growth if we choose that path. So you don't have to say what you can't do. You can affirm that you're aspiring to these things. You could say, I'm learning to grow every day, or I'm growing every day. I think I like that more. That's more solid. I'm growing every day. So the idea of not being good enough, but the fact that you're growing, that helps to give you power to say that I'm on this path, I'm doing these things already, and this can just become bigger what I'm doing. So that requires being kind to yourself, giving yourself credit, being gentle with yourself, and allowing yourself to develop through this life. No one is born into this life who has arrived. This is a whole journey from the time that you start to wherever it ends for you in this life path, but that's a journey, and in that time, there's growth that happens, the opportunity for growth for sure, but I don't think that anyone's, even if we're talking about the person who doesn't grow as much as maybe they could have or as someone else, the way you started is not the way that you end. And so there is some type of growth going on for everyone when we come into this life journey and this path. So next I'm gonna put a dandelion leaf. I'm gonna put a full cup of dandelion leaf so that this is nice and robust with the dandelion for my daughter. And we are gonna add that in. Yep. All right. So the next statement that I wanted to mention is, that's just how I am. That's just how I am. Sometimes I think that can denote that, you can't change, or, that there's no hope to do anything better. Maybe you don't have the energy to change. Just because we don't have the energy to change doesn't mean that being just how you are is gonna give you the best results in your life, to just say that this is just how I am. Because if it's something that's harming you, harming your situation, harming your family, there could be benefit to trying, and I don't even want to say trying because that word, to putting forth the work to get to a different place. So a way that you could say that is, I'm open to growth. I'm open to evolving, and that journey looks different for everyone, but to be open to it means that the possibility is there. To say that's just how I am is being stuck and cemented in something that probably isn't even where you want to be. So really being mindful, to give yourself credit, to know that if you open yourself up to something, you're going to get the benefit of being open. But when we're closed off, when we just say that's just how I am, then we can never see our growth. All right, and then I can't do this. It's a big one. It's a big one that many who are not confident, who don't believe in themselves, say. Oftentimes you might remember yourself as a child saying what you can't do. And some people had people come along to show them that they could do it. And some people had people who have confirmed that they couldn't, or people who didn't challenge that thought. But we can take the same thought process in these statements into our adult life and feel defeated. The word to say, I can't do it, just saying that, to me, gives the energy of defeat, being defeated. And we can do all things. There is a saying that says, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. I look at Christ different. I think of that as, the kingdom of God that's within me, what I can ascend to, what I can rise to, the higher version of me. That strength that's within all of us lets me know and lets you know, if you open yourself to it, that you can do all things through that higher power that's within you, or that higher self about you, to be open again to that possibility. So something that you could say to kind of lessen that power of saying that you can't do something is acknowledging that maybe something is new, that you're not familiar with it. It does not mean that you cannot learn it. You are certainly able to learn it, but being open again to the idea of learning so that you feel that you can do it. Sometimes when we think we can't do something, it's because we haven't prepared for it, we haven't studied a thing, and so of course that can feel scary. But also, you could very much well have the full capacity within you to do the thing that you're saying you can't do, but you're not used to doing it yet. And that comes to that part where sometimes there's just no better answer than to try. And that can seem scary. It puts you in a vulnerable space. But just think about how you feel when there was something that you weren't sure if you could do, or you thought you couldn't do it, and then you did it, and the way you felt after you did it, it's like a esteem boost. It makes you feel like, what can I do next? What else can I do? I remember when I was in school as a college student, I had so many things that I had to do on my own. First of all, I wasn't the strongest high school student. So going to college and learning all these things and having to be serious about it was different. I was paying my own tuition. This was different to have to pay my way. During my college years, I got pregnant with my daughter, and there were many people who told me I should stop, and I wasn't sure if I could do it. But through it all, I graduated on time, and I remember how I felt after I graduated and completed that. It was such an esteem boost. It was like an adrenaline rush. It was like, what next? You know what I mean? And sometimes that's the best time, is to when you do something, you get like that adrenaline rush, that momentum. Keep going. Let it be what inspires you for the next thing, and recognize that you can do it. All right, so next I'm going to put cinnamon in here. I'm going to put 1 cinnamon stick in here. Cinnamon is pretty potent, and I think 1 cinnamon stick will be enough. I think it'll be enough. So we're going to put the cinnamon in, and then we're going to look at this statement. Some people do this, putting yourself down maybe before someone else can. So the statement, I'm such a stupid idiot, or I'm so dumb. Even though sometimes people can laugh and say that, I encourage you to be mindful to not put yourself down in your jokes. If you make a mistake and you're embarrassed, it's okay to make a mistake, but you don't have to put yourself down. I think that sometimes this happens when people want to put themselves down before someone else gets the opportunity to do that. And so it could be something to say and get that out the way, laugh at yourself. But these things are things you are reaffirming to yourself on a subconscious level. Somewhere you're taking that in and you're believing that. And I know that that's going to impact the way you move, the way you operate. Thinking about somebody who gives themselves grace when they make a mistake and say, okay, I learned from that, as opposed to saying, I'm so dumb. These two people are going to show up different in their abilities to try anything. So give yourself grace to say, I made a mistake. I'll try better. I'll do better next time. I'll continue to put forth the effort. Another statement would be good vibes only. Instead of saying good vibes only, because I think I understand the point of saying good vibes only. Like, you only want good vibes around you, but the fact of the matter is, we're not only going to have good vibes around us, we're going to have some bad vibes, or some bad vibes that are challenging. And if we only think about the good vibes, how are we going to handle those challenging vibes that come around? Challenging vibes or bad vibes don't have to be pointless. Like, these negative vibes that we don't necessarily desire can be the very vibes that help us learn something about ourselves, learn something about the people who are around us, learn how to grow, learn how to evolve through it. Now, this doesn't mean that you're keeping people around you who have bad vibes, but you can learn from those people who have the bad vibes. You don't have to be running from the bad vibes, because then that means they're chasing you. It's a difference in being steadfast and understanding that things come and they pass through you, and you are steadfast in your core beliefs of who you are, that you can get through those vibes that are not so good, and you can learn from them, and the master grows from them. So good vibes only? No, I would say realizing that all emotions are valid. So even when you have those days where you're feeling sad, not feeling so beat up from that or defeated from that, because sometimes those challenging things are an opportunity to learn something about yourself, learn something about something that's going on in your environment. And it can cause you to shift many things in your life based off of that. And then we have what I should have done. I should have done this thing. And we can turn that to, I did my best. I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. Because when we talk about what we should have done, it can feel like guilt or being ashamed. And I know that these are two emotions that I don't think have any real benefit. Now, there are benefits, I think, to sadness, anger, some of these emotions, but things like guilt and shame, you know, they create the opportunity to be manipulated, you know, because we feel so guilty about a thing, we want to make up for it, or we want to overextend to try to correct what already happened. So what already happened, it happened, right? There's no benefit in shaming yourself at this point. The benefit comes from learning from it. And here's the thing, when you learn from it and then you change behavior or action, then that's the correction. That's all you need. You know, someone who comes to you and tries to put shame on you from something you did 5 or 10 years ago or a year ago, you know, if you have, let's just say, apologized for that and then corrected your ways, it is not necessary for you to stay in this energy of shame or guilt, because that's, at this point, there's no growth that's going to come from that. So the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, no, we're not doing shoulda, coulda, wouldas. We're learning from the things that we've done, and we're making better decisions, and we're forgiving ourselves. And then next is, it is what it is. You hear people say all the time, it is what it is. And, you know, sometimes what this feels like to me is like a person who feels like they don't really have much control over what is happening. I was just listening to a video from Exodus Summit. If you don't know Exodus Summit, or this is actually Exodus Summit for sure. If you don't know Exodus Summit, you should check out Exodus Summit if you're a Black woman. And also Stephanie Perry, who is one of the founders of Exodus Summit, is Stephanie Perry and Rashida Dow. On Stephanie Perry's channel, she was talking to someone who was talking about that statement, it is what it is. And I think that sometimes it was being suggested that sometimes that comes from a place of hopelessness. It is what it is can denote, I really don't have any control over what's going on, so I'm not going to try. I'm just going to accept this. I'm just going to say it is what it is. It is what it is just, I think, a new term that, you know, gets popular. Oftentimes we get these new terms, and for a while everyone's saying the term, but really what it comes down to is there's a level of hopelessness underneath that type of statement, because things don't have to be what it is. There have been many revolutions in our history because people didn't accept what it was. And we shouldn't get so comfortable to accept what it is, you know, if it's not bringing us what we want. So we have to really think about this. So instead of saying it is what it is, you can say something like, I have the power to choose how I respond. I have the power to choose my next steps. I have the power to envision something beyond this if it's something that's not bringing satisfaction. So we don't ever have to settle, regardless of who you see settling, regardless of these statements that people are making. This does not have to be your decision, your path. The revolutionary person isn't just settling. Someone like Harriet Tubman could have said, it is what it is. This is just the circumstances we are in. But something in her said no, you know, and she started something that then has been historically monumental in the lives of so many people. So we are adding some orange peel, dried orange peel. I mentioned the orange peel's benefits and the taste that it adds to the flavor of the tea. And we're going to talk about our last statement as I add in my holy basil and my stevia leaf. I hope my dog stops barking. He sees somebody out there. And my acrimony. More than likely there's a dog walking by. I hope he just calms down for me. Okay. So our last statement, and just to be aware, these other herbs, I'm putting smaller amounts, like 1/4 of a cup, you know, so it's enough to have it in and get the benefits, but it's not overpowering the base of the tea. But our last statement is, they made me feel, whoo, baby, They made me feel. They made me. They. The thing that I'm going to say about that is that when we do that, we point to power outside of ourselves. Hold on, I'm going to have to get this dog. So, they made me feel gives complete power to someone outside of you. Because no one really can make you feel anything. The power is in recognizing that we chose to feel a certain way. And, you know, sometimes when we're coming from that space of wanting people to be accountable for their actions, or, you know, that's fine, but everyone's not going to be accountable. And the thing of talking about what someone's made you feel, it gives power to them. So if you have somebody in your space who's trying to make you feel less than, for example, and you say to yourself, they made me feel less than, this person is winning as far as they're concerned, because they're able to control your emotional state based off of their poor behavior. You know, and the fact of the matter is, the real power comes when you recognize that no one can make you feel anything. You know, you can choose to feel a certain way, but the power and the liberation is in the fact that you have the power to control your feelings. So a way that you could change that is that you could say, I felt less than when this thing happened. So it really does denote that you chose the feeling, not that someone was able to come and place a feeling in you. Do you see the difference in the power struggle, the power dynamic in that? If someone comes into your space and they're able to do a thing and boom, yeah, I feel exactly how they chose to make me feel, that would just keep us in a space of continual suffering from someone who maybe doesn't have the best intentions for you. And there are some of us who are actually living like that, you know? But when you say, I felt this way because this happened, it does recognize that first you felt a way because something happened. But you're putting the responsibility back on you, not giving the power to them. And when you recognize the responsibility is on you, you recognize the power is also on you. You have the power for what you feel within your own life, and no one other person can come and trump that unless you give that to them. So just understand, sometimes that can feel like, well, no, because they did this thing, but we're not being in that state of being the victim to somebody else's bad behavior. We're being in the power of where we have ability and agency in our own life. So that's what I'm sharing with you today. Put in the comment section, which of these 10 statements do you think sticks more with you? Just put the number 1 through 10. And I would love to hear that from you. I would like for you to also like this video and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.